So I put out the upcoming events. Just a reminder to you guys on the other side, this is what's called a Teams Live event. So we're doing this because it's a little bit easier on the presenter side to control a few things. We'll probably try a couple of different options. We'll try this and we'll try the Teams meetings as well and see kind of who likes what the best. It also gives us the opportunity to learn more about how the live events work. So as you guys are coming in, just want to welcome you to this month's Office 365 meeting. We are going to be talking about Project Cortex today. Before we get going with that, I just want to remind you that because this is a live event as opposed to a normal Teams meeting, I know it's a little quiet on your end in terms of you can't really collaborate with other people. But what you can do is you should have a Q&A option on the right-hand side. So if you have questions, feel free to ask questions. They will come to us behind the scenes, so we'll answer them the best we can. If we think it's something that makes sense for everybody to see, we will publish it out to the group. If you'd like it to remain private, just put a little note in there that you'd like it to remain private, and then we won't publish it out to everybody else. So if you have any questions, just post them there. I just wanted to quickly go over the upcoming events for the next month from kind of now till June. Our next event next month is going to be same thing. We'll send it out through Eventbrite and through Meetup, and we'll send the link out to it. Mickey Brewer is going to be going over some basic Outlook tips. This is a hot topic that everybody's been asking me, especially since we're all working from home. So she's just going to basically go over some tips and tricks of how to use Outlook best working from home. So that same time, same link, same next month, and we'll send that out through Eventbrite. It'll be on Monday, June 8th. We will, if we end up doing the regular meeting for that, I will send out a note that maybe that'll start a little bit earlier like we're used to. So we'll see what happens with that. I do want to point out that the Lawrence SharePoint user group, Nate has moved on to do other stuff. He's still in the community, still a very active participant, but he has made the decision to stop having new user group meetings. I just wanted to point that out because I know a lot of you guys really like those. So if you have any questions about that, you can go to his blog and it answers all the questions around what he's doing with that. The next one is our local IABA chapter. I've been an active participant in that since it began. Next month, or actually this month, May 27th, I'm going to be doing the presentation, and I'm going to go over basically using process gap analysis in terms of defining what the users need. And although the Office 365 user group is more on the tech side, a lot of the people who attend this particular user group also get a lot of value out of going to the IABA group as well. It's an evening group, so it'll meet at 7 o'clock on Wednesday, May 27th. I've put the link here if you'd like to register. Once again, it's a free event. So all you have to do is click on that, join, and then we'll talk about process gap analysis stuff. On the kind of national side of the house, Microsoft Build, which normally is a fantastic event because of the COVID stuff, will be handled virtually. Because it's virtual, it's all free. So anybody who hasn't ever had the opportunity to go to Build for whatever reason, this would be a great time for you to pop in there. I put the link in here, so if you guys want to go out there and just register, it's pretty easy to do, and then you can attend it next week from the 19th to 21st. There's also another event, and Joel might say a couple of words about this when he pops on, but the Microsoft 365 Virtual Marathon, it's a global event. It's super cool. It's going to be running Wednesday and Thursday, May 27th and 28th. I've got a couple sessions on it myself. So the link right here to register for that is in here as well. And we'll, again, like normal, send this all out to everybody after the user group, so you'll have access to it as well. And then the last one right now, as of now, the North American Collaboration Summit has been rescheduled to September 28th through 30th. As of now, the plan is to meet in Branson in the end of September, and hopefully things will be under control by then and we'll be able to do that. So the link to that is here as well. Figure it's not too far to go, so hopefully everything will be good by then. So that's kind of our upcoming events. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
I'll share mine.
Yep. So I'll stop sharing mine. I'm going to pull Joel's up. So we're really excited to have Joel here. He has a couple of fancy points of information about himself, you know, like being on the original SharePoint team and really participating with that for a long time. So I'm pretty excited to have him here. And like I said, we're going to be talking about Project Cortex. So as soon as I see his stuff pop up, there we go.
Can you see my screen now?
Yep, I just posted it to live, so they should be getting it in a few seconds. So I'm going to hand it over to you.
Great. Hey, everybody. It's great to be here. Hope you can see my screen. If you can't, I did turn on my video. I'm not sure if my head pops up too, but it's great to be here with all of you. I mean, it's kind of crazy times, but I think I really enjoy these virtual events. It keeps us close and kind of connected. So I appreciate being able to speak in Kansas City, even though we can't be physically in Kansas City right now, or I can't anyway. But it's great to be here with you, and I hope you do take an opportunity to use the Q&A panel. Happy to be as interactive as possible. In fact, I may ask Sharon to pop in as well, or maybe people on your team, just to keep it interactive. I really enjoy the interactivity. So we're talking about Project Cortex today. I want to focus on some of the business value. I kind of wish I could find out how many of you, maybe you can even use that Q&A panel. How many people have not heard of Project Cortex? Is there anybody on the call who's just never heard of it at all? Doesn't even know what we're talking about? Just message that in the panel, and I'll have the other folks let me know if there's anybody who does chime in. It's great to be here. So I'm showing kind of some fun pictures. One of the pictures you'll see on the top right is of the InfoPath funeral. In fact, I know some people on the call were actually there as well with me. The InfoPath funeral was one of the community activities I organized. So while Sharon says I was the first kind of SharePoint team in Microsoft IT, little story that you may or may not have heard of this story. Basically, Jeff Teeper talks about how SharePoint started as something that was under his desk. And I was that guy in IT who took what was under Jeff Teeper's desk and moved it into the data center. So it's an interesting story about how SharePoint evolved, but I was very privileged to be in IT at Microsoft in the early days, and have been working, you know, even before it was called SharePoint, it was Tahoe and Office Web Server, and working with Jeff and his team, as well as the Office Web Server team back in those early days, was some great memories. That was about 20 years ago in December was when I joined Microsoft. Crazy times. But yeah, so I like to do fun things with the community. That funeral for InfoPath was kind of funny. I also did a wedding last year for Teams and SharePoint. And I think that it's kind of funny, more and more you'll actually see people putting Teams and SharePoint with hearts. Teams and SharePoint definitely belong together. And it's important that people not just think about Teams or SharePoint, but it's actually the two of them together. And I think that that's so applicable even to, as we talk about Project Cortex, that we understand that as things evolve in Microsoft 365, that the platform of Microsoft 365 is really made up of SharePoint, Teams, Exchange Online / Outlook, the Office platform. And so when you talk about Project Cortex, it's really amazing how it kind of pulls all these things together, but leveraging AI. So I'm going to give you a little bit more intro before we dive into this, and I'm hoping my screen will respond. There we go. So I work for Proficient. They're the ones who's giving me time to speak today. They're a national company, publicly traded, PRFT. We've got about nearly 400 consultants in the Microsoft practice. There's about 3,700 across Proficient. In our Microsoft practice, we've taken 5 million people to the cloud. You know, we're one of those Microsoft partners that focus on helping people. In fact, in this COVID-19 times, we've actually worked a lot with hospitals on some healthcare bots, as well as some virtual rounding, working with Microsoft on some of those initiatives. But it's incredible how close, like even the technology we work on, how it actually does empower people on the front lines to be more productive. And these templates that Microsoft put out around crisis management, the templates and the portals, and even the remote work from home kind of tools for Power Apps, highly recommend you guys check those out. It really leverages how well the platform, Microsoft 365 platform, can be used in these crazy times. So the agenda for today. What I'm going to be doing is diving into this Project Cortex. Did we get any feedback from people who were on the call? Anybody?
Yeah. So we've got one person who hasn't heard anything about it. Tammy says she loves it. She's excited. Can't wait for it to drive business value. Cool. And John Moore has heard about it at Ignite, but he really hasn't heard much since, so he's excited to find out more about it.
Awesome. So it looks like we've got people from all over the map. People who've never heard of it, have no idea what we're talking about. And then there's those who, have maybe seen a little bit. I want this to be one where we can dive into it, kind of understand why it is and what it is, and start to really dig into this, because I'll tell you right now, I had a conversation with Chris McNulty and Dan Holm, who are on the SharePoint side. You may know those guys from the SharePoint world. And I was asking them, what are your priorities for this year? And they said Project Cortex is #1. So I know that's kind of a behind the scenes, but when you start saying, hey, what is the SharePoint marketing team's #1 focus? And they say Project Cortex, it kind of wakes you up a little bit to say, why do they care? Why is this the #1 thing this year? And I know that there's no blogs out there that say this is Microsoft's #1, but when you start talking about that from a perspective of somebody who's spent their whole life, their whole business life in SharePoint, like Dan Holm and Chris McNulty, and those guys who are basically managing what Microsoft marketing's focused on, it's really fascinating, I think, to say, what is this thing and how can it really change how we do business and so on. So I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to reinforce this at the end, but I put together an infographic that basically breaks down what I would consider 7 areas of business value. So like, what's the business value of Project Cortex? Now I understand I haven't even told you what it is, but I'm going to tell you what these 7 points are, and we'll come back to these at the end so you can see how these things, so you can be thinking about these things in your head, and in the end we'll reinforce these. So I'll go over these fairly quickly. Empower teams with knowledge and expertise in the apps you use every day. Advanced artificial intelligence to harness collective knowledge. Okay, AI to harness collective knowledge. Connecting people to knowledge and knowledge to people. Streamlining business processes with security, compliance, and automation. Discover information about topics, platforms, and connected data. Empower organizational agility, drive efficiencies, and cost savings. And #7, automated extraction and tagging, improving search and discovery based on seeded topics from your taxonomies. Okay, so those are the 7 points that I've chosen. This is not like a Microsoft list per se. I'll show you some of the Microsoft slides, and I'll try and point out when it's a Microsoft slide versus something I built. But I do think that this is a really important aspect of really understanding Project Cortex, is you know, a lot of people say, oh, what's AI? And there's an interesting study that was done recently where there's still 30% of businesses who haven't made plans to use AI in their business. And it's like, you know, is that because they're afraid of it? Is because they don't understand? And I would say that a lot of people just don't understand the business value of what AI brings to the table. Now, there's a quote from back in the 80s that I love, and I think it helps you understand what this space is. If HP knew what HP knows, it would be 3 times more profitable. And that was Lou Platt of HP back in the 80s. But it's interesting because it's like, what is this? This is knowledge. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about knowledge. It's not just information, but it's like, it's wisdom. This is the collective knowledge of an organization. If HP knew what HP knows, and think about it that with your organization, if your organization knew what it knows, that it could be how many times for you more profitable. That ability to tap into your knowledge, that ability to tap into the things that you've already learned that can or should be captured and indexed and built into ontologies so that you could navigate it and rediscover it and reuse it and to build your templates on it and to build your automation on top of it. It's really powerful. And I think the more we can wrap our heads around what does it mean for your business, the more that you'll understand what Project Cortex is. So these are some Microsoft information challenges. I did add some clarification in these, but basically Microsoft would talk about silos of information, and this is an industry problem. Every company has these problems. Smaller the business, probably not as big, but the bigger the business, there's these silos, whether it's departmental silos or your SharePoint data versus your Box data, or your CRM system versus your productivity systems, and so on. There's silos everywhere. And then as well, search. Search is something that we continue to say, man, if I could just find it, if I could be aware of it, if I could discover it, it's a huge challenge around your ability to reuse, whether it's reusing code or reusing documents, templates, all these things. You don't want to have to start from scratch. If you could start from something else, you'd be so much more productive. And then there's these tacit and explicit knowledge gaps. I have a slide where I'm going to talk about what those mean, so it'll be easier when you're looking at a picture. But as well, these knowledge gaps of what's in people's heads, as well, the knowledge that's actually in the systems that we just don't have access to, whether it's security or permissions, or just don't know where it is to even find it. And then the last, that steep ramp up, knowledge drain from people leaving your team and or organization. And as well as the new part of it too. You have a new employee. Wouldn't it be great if you could just pour all this stuff into their head of like, hey, now you know what our team knows. So I did put this together in an infographic. This is kind of the header on it, but I also think even this header, Project Cortex, business value, connecting knowledge and expertise across Microsoft 365. So when you start thinking, what is Microsoft 365? What are the knowledge? What are the tools? Project Cortex isn't just a new feature update to SharePoint, okay? This isn't just the new Delve. This is something that is kind of like a horizontal platform that integrates with SharePoint and Office and email and Teams and Yammer Q&A. And you can plug in your Power Apps and your Power Automate and your Power Virtual Assistants, like all your automation tools, and even tapping into the Azure search connectors to where you can actually pull in data even outside of Microsoft 365 and plugging that all in. So we'll dive into this a little bit more. I tried to create a single visual for what is Project Cortex. And I've made a few different attempts, but this is I like this one. And I wasn't the designer, but I was the one who kind of visualized it and put it together. This is a little bit prettier than my version. But when you start talking about what is Project Cortex, I kind of see this brain, okay? And Cortex is very appropriate name. And some people would say, oh, is Project Cortex the code name? No, it actually had a different code name before. So I expect Project Cortex to stay the name of this product. And I think the Cortex is great since it is about AI. And if you're looking for a single line that defines what is Project Cortex, this is my elevator pitch single line. Project Cortex applies AI to automatically organize your content and deliver innovative experience with topic cards, topic pages, and knowledge centers across Office, Outlook, and Teams. In fact, you could add SharePoint to that as well. But basically, what we've got here, if we start digging into this image a little bit, you've got a knowledge center and you've got the content center. So there's two major centers, both which live in SharePoint. Okay, these are new knowledge centers and content centers. The knowledge center is a lot like Wikipedia for your organization. So this knowledge center is where machine learning is happening. It's gathering knowledge, it's reasoning over your data. It's essentially the AI making recommendations to experts who then approve and validate what's happening or what it's discovered. Okay, so basically the knowledge center is this Wikipedia, but it's not just manual, it's actually automated in a sense, but it does need some reinforcement from a human. So it's a great partnership between the AI, this artificial intelligence, this machine learning process. And I know that some people are kind of averse to that word AI. So before you get hung up on what this is AI, no, don't get hung up on it. It's basically machine learning where it's essentially mining data. And what it's doing is it's clustering it, it's grouping it, it's filtering it, it's extracting. So if you have videos, then it can extract the text out of the videos. If you've got an image, it can extract the text out of it. So it's basically leveraging the natural language processing, the machine learning, and so on to be able to suggest topics and definitions and acronyms. And you can actually seed this with taxonomy acronyms and new topics that are then as well the kind of that human working with the machine to validate and build out this incredible knowledge center. Now we're going to look at some visuals in a second. In fact, I'm going to jump into the demo, but I want you to understand kind of how it works at a simplistic single picture level, and I think this starts to do it a little bit. So on the other side, here we have the machine teaching. So there's something called content center, and you can have many content centers. And these content centers is where a human is essentially training it's doing machine teaching. That's kind of a Microsoft term, machine teaching. But essentially it's the AI where you're actually saying, here are a set of documents. These documents are all statement of works, or these documents are all POs. Learn from them, and then it'll give its data back and it says, hey, I'm noticing these fields. And you say, well, these are the fields I care about. And then it can populate and learn to extract that content, whether it's digital content or an image or whatever. Basically, you can teach it to classify and create these AI models that then extract content or can then be tapped into to be automated. So basically you're talking about your power apps that then can kick off business processes and so on. Now, all this doesn't just happen automatically. In fact, the content center by default will be just blank. It'll be empty. And even the knowledge center will be empty. But what's different is with Project Cortex, it's going to start recommending things after you tell it where to go. So the admin side, the expertise side of this is where the admins are essentially saying, these are the paths that you can go look at this data. And the machine learning goes out and suggests topics. The machine teaching content center is basically you're needing it to feed it documents to build a model. And we can dig into this. In fact, my preference is let's jump into a demo. But let me cover this one little piece before we jump into the demo. So in an organization, and really in knowledge in general, there's kind of two main pieces of knowledge, or two ways to kind of describe knowledge. There's explicit knowledge, which is your data, your documents, your records, your files. It's the stuff that's in SQL. It's the stuff that's in your file servers. It's the stuff that's in SharePoint. That's your explicit knowledge. It is data and information. Then there's this tacit knowledge. Tacit knowledge is what's in people's heads. It's experience. It's thinking. It's your commitment. It's your culture. It's your tribal knowledge is the way I like to think of it. And our ability to essentially take tacit knowledge and convert it to explicit knowledge is often what your managers are trying to do. It's like, hey, you just fixed that thing. I need you to document it. They're basically saying, take that tacit knowledge, that thing you learned, and go build a document out of it. And that's something that the companies who can successfully do this build their run books, build your best practices guides, build your information architecture guides. Instead of it just being stuck in people's heads, how can we actually convert this to knowledge that is captured and usable? Because people are valuable resources and the information they hold is useful, but far more so if shared with others. And so that culture of sharing and if you've ever been in these forums where people are asking questions and then people respond to them and you mark it as a best answer, that's one of the reasons why Yammer is a great tool, is this idea of this, let's capture the Q&A, let's capture the conversation. And even in Teams, you just had a chat with somebody, they gave you some bit of information. Hey, that bit of information you got, how do I store that? That's what Project Cortex is about, capturing that tacit knowledge as well, adding it to the enterprise corpus of knowledge in the Knowledge Center. All right, so let's jump. I want to keep this lively for you guys. The first place you should go when thinking about Project Cortex is aka.ms/Project Cortex, which will take you to this location. So if you just type aka.ms/Project Cortex, this URL here, it will take you here to this Project Cortex knowledge, your knowledge network in Microsoft 365. And more you'll hear them kind of talking about this from that perspective. Your content reasoned over by AI in the products you use every day. All right, cool. So we scroll down. You think that you're at the end because you see this form. You're not at the end. You have to keep scrolling and you'll see that there are these resources here on the bottom, including some videos. There's a great case study from Mott MacDonald. Connecting people to knowledge and knowledge to people is their vision. That's how they were kind of focused on Project Cortex and what they were looking for. There's a great overview video. This Microsoft Mechanics Live is a great one where Naomi Moneypenny really dives into Project Cortex and shows you some of the machine teaching. I'll save those guys that's your homework. Go watch those. Come in here to the demos. So any demo I'm going to show, you can also show this to other people. Let's start with the empower people with knowledge. So these are clickable demos. So click here. All right. There we go. So this clickable demo, basically we click begin demo, and here we can see, now step back from this a little bit, you can see we're in email, we're in Outlook, right? You can see we're in Outlook. So here in this email, in a tool we use every day, we're noticing, imagine you're a new employee and you're like, if this site being mapped for core, what's core? Well, cool, Project Cortex is being used. Project Cortex is highlighted this topic inside of Outlook, and we can click on it and we can see there's a topic card. In this topic card, we can actually see this is The CORE means Construction Operations Reliability. This is an acronym. And Project CORE focuses on making site survey, blah, 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 blah. And you can see this is actually comes from a project. There's some experts in this construction operations reliability. And it was AI that put this thing together. And you can see there's even files associated with CORE. So I can go learn as an employee more about CORE. And I can even see there's some related topics related to that. So I can continue to learn more about this thing, or I can just move on. You know, I could then go to my next email now, or continue to read, because now I know what this is like. It takes me back to the, like, 3rd grade when you're reading a book and you're like, what is this word? And you'd see footnotes, and it was like definitions at the bottom of the page. That was like so enlightening. I remember it's like, because your 1st grade books, there was no footnotes. And if you didn't know a word, you have to go ask your mom. Well, now in the business with Project Cortex, that idea of having to go and tap somebody, well, with Project Cortex, we can get our things defined, our acronyms defined, our projects connected to the data. So now it's like, oh, well, let's see what this does for in other areas. So I click in Files, and here we are in SharePoint. And we're actually on a SharePoint Modern page. I'm going to scroll down a little bit on this Modern page, and you can see here we are in SharePoint, and we as well have some enhanced pages because of Project Cortex, where CORE is actually spelled out here and it's underlined. We have several on the page. We click on it, we have our topic card here, but we can actually click on the title and be taken to the Knowledge Center. And you remember the Knowledge Center is that place where all of this knowledge is collected into a single place, kind of like our organizational Wikipedia. And those are my words. But I think a lot of people think of the Knowledge Center as the Wikipedia. But we scroll down here, and you can see there's people associated with this. We have a really nice description. I can follow it. I can share it. I can even edit this page and add web parts, knowledge parts to it, and so on. There's my documents, or not my documents, but the documents that relate to this topic that have been added. I can see as well there's a cool ontology knowledge network that connects the topics to each other, so I can then navigate them. I can even see those related topics, and there's even some Yammer Q&A here that has conversations and teams as well. You know, basically this conversations that are happening in the organization, people can then capture that and send it to be added to topics. It's pretty cool stuff. And as well, I can go to my topics, and you can see these are the topics that are trending around me. I can see my colleagues are working on these topics. There's a card here that shows mine. There's a little bit of gamification. I'm a top 10 contributor here on this particular topic, my experience, and so on. Now, I want to stop on this one just to open it up for questions anybody has about the Knowledge Center and that kind of this side of the world as it relates to Project Cortex. Any questions so far?
I don't have any questions. Tara said this is not a question, but she loves the machine teaching aspect of it because it's going to make Project Cortex so much more useful.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I think a lot of companies who they think about classification projects and they're so daunting. And as well, even the idea of tagging. Tagging is something that humans just aren't so good at. We fail. You know, it doesn't matter how much instruction and, you know, the person who kind of cracks the whip and says, hey, make sure you're tagging your documents. We're just so bad at that. It's just not something that humans are so good at, because when we tag it, we don't know. We're just looking at a bunch of words. We don't know what those words even mean sometimes.
Yeah, it definitely gives us some immediate something coming back to us where we can see that it's actually providing value when you tag that, as opposed to just, you know, going out into the ether somewhere.
Yeah.
We do have a question. Does this integrate with Microsoft Search and Bing?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So Microsoft Search. So when you start talking about the mining that Project Cortex is using, it is actually using Microsoft Search. So it's doing its reasoning over your content and suggesting these topics. That happens during indexing, essentially. Now, when you say Bing, you know, when you talk about the Microsoft Search aspect of Bing, like you're on Bing and you've done the integration with Microsoft Search, then when you do a search there and it brings back organizational content, absolutely, you can get, it enhances search because of all the optimization it's doing, but as well, you start leveraging acronyms and things like that from a search perspective, it can increase and enhance your search experience as well.
Let's see. There is a, let's see. When people hide their delve, we can't see what they're working on, and Tammy worries about that being the same in the Knowledge Center.
Sure. So one of the things about Knowledge Center, as it relates to and is different than Delve, people were freaked out by Delve because there was really not a lot of control. You know, later in the game, Microsoft added some controls, and essentially they've kind of even pulled the plug on it. Microsoft learned a lot through the Delve experience about what people are comfortable with and what they're used to. With Delve, it honors the security of the platform. So basically, you won't see anything that you're not supposed to see, but even the ability for people to tap into it, you have the keys. You can control, the people who are managing Project Cortex can essentially add layers on top of it. My recommendation as well on top of that is you want to delve to look at the things that are more public. So you're not going to be able to get to a topic and see content that isn't approved. So there is that kind of human validation aspect to it in terms of building out the topics. But as well, that idea of security and making sure things are secure, and even on the other side of things being open and being able to access knowledge, it's designed to be open and transparent. So things that are most sensitive, you shouldn't start there. You should not be focused on sensitive content in the beginning, for sure. You want to build some trust with it from an organizational perspective, and you may simply not even add sensitive data to it. So it's another reason why when you're preparing for Project Cortex is consider what are those, how do we handle sensitive data inside of our organization, and how do we make sure that that's not stuff that is getting potentially added into Cortex.
So I do have another question that came up.
Yep.
Are the words, and I'm assuming they mean entries, being the auto hyperlinks, are those based on AI?
Yes. So basically those, when you see a link underlined, that's a link to a topic in the Knowledge Center. So all of that stuff about the linking is all about Knowledge Center, and essentially what we saw in the last demo. The Knowledge Center is basically put together by AI, but it's validated. So there's a human in that process where the human says, yes, this is a topic we want inside of our organization. Yes, this is a good definition. Yes, this is a good page that's kind of built out with files that have been added or recommended based on the mining process and the extraction process and so on.
So another question, will we be able to configure the Knowledge Center as company or sector?
Not sure what sector means, but yes, it is. Think of the Knowledge Center as one place, and essentially the Knowledge Center is Cortex. It is for the organization. It's security trimmed based on who you are. It is catered to you based on the topics you follow and so on, and how you interact with it. So it's a very personal experience at the same time as it being organizational knowledge. You're following topics are trending around you, and so on. So basically, full stop, everything you've seen so far is the Knowledge Center and is AI driven and validated by humans. Here is the Content Center, which is driven by humans. It's kind of like starts with humans and then is essentially reasoned over by AI and then it comes back to the humans, and then you'll see what I'm talking about in terms of how the content centers work. But there's more than one content center. So when you talk about sectors or whatever, I'm not sure what that means, but in terms of dividing up the company in different ways, here's one company here, as in this example in Contoso Electronics. The finance group built a content center, and you can see they've already got some documents in here, but we're going to create a new one. So we're going to create a new document library, just like in the SharePoint world. In fact, you can see we are in SharePoint, even though this is a new Project Cortex enhanced experience, you could say. We click create, and we're going to build a model. So we've got a new library in the content center. We're going to go into AI Builder to build a model. And this isn't a bunch of code. This is basically, we're building this model through kind of a wizard-like experience. So we give it a model. This model is about purchase orders. Okay, and we're going to add documents that have the same layout. Okay. And we need to start with about 5 to 10 sample documents. 5 is a really good number to start with. When you get too many, it's actually not helpful even. It'll even limit you these days if you're using the UI. So you pick your documents, and now it's looked at those, it's looked and seen similarities between all these documents, and it's saying, all right, it's highlighted those set of fields that it says that it thinks are important. So we can say, yes, we want the vendor, we want the date, we want the bunches of fields. So basically, we pick a bunch of them. So we can see we got date, PO, vendor number. We even got totals, calculated fields, and so on. We even have some special instructions and notes and so on. So here's our selected fields. It's going to save us some time. And it now is training the model based on those fields. Okay, so it's learning based on that, and it'll build us a model that we can then use.
So, hey, Joel, while you're talking about pulling that information in, we do have a question about Project Cortex being able to ingest data from outside sources, so things like GitHub or other applications.
Yeah, I do have a slide on the connectors, so let's save that one. But I like that question; it's a good one.
Perfect.
So with this one, basically, with this content center, think of this as being like in SharePoint, a library where we're training it on documents and we're building a model. Once you've got that model, you could use it elsewhere. So we're building a model that we can publish. So like as an example, this model could be used in Power Apps and Flow. So we're going to publish this model, and we're going to create a flow, a Power Automate flow. And this one is going to connect to SharePoint. So you can see even with this connector, so you talk about, I don't know about GitHub, but let's just say using Power Apps, we could go and grab documents from Box or Dropbox or whatever to then run this on it, run it in a CDS. And now we've actually stored this as part of, we've just created a model, we've added it. Now we're actually going to upload documents to this one that the flow that we just created is based on. So it's set to when documents are uploaded to then to run that flow, if that makes sense. So here we are, we're adding a bunches of documents, and it's uploading our documents. And what is it doing? It is taking these PDFs, which are normally just images, right? And it's extracting dates, PO numbers, vendor information, shipping information, even our totals, and so on. So this is powerful. This kind of thing, before Project Cortex, you would need something like Effisoft or Kofax or some kind of extraction engine. Maybe you could do a little bit with some Nintex, but you'd need some kind of extractor type of process. Now we have this ability with Project Cortex to teach it so that now whenever it sees a PO, at least in purchase orders where this flow is set up, you could go and classify your documents and then grab POs that it recognizes and push them into this purchase order, as an example. You know, there's the ideas are kind of limitless here. But now we basically automatically extracted the metadata as they're uploaded. And here, if you look at one particular purchase order, you can see the metadata that's down here does match the content in the document. So yeah, obviously you can compare it. It looks good. Good job. All right, good job. So that's the Content Center. And there's one other Content Center demo I actually want to show you. This one's called Content Capture. So that was the organized knowledge one. We're going to go into the Content Capture one. And this one acts a little bit strange when you click on it. I don't know why. I think it's something that Microsoft set up when they were setting up this one. It acts a little bit strange. Okay, let me do it this way. Scroll down. Okay, yeah, for some reason when it runs this one, it puts it underneath. It's kind of hard to you know, this is a bug, but anyway, you know the bug now. Scroll down and that's where the demo starts up. Where the other two, it starts up in a new tab. This one, for some reason, starts it below it.
Hey, Joel.
Yep.
While you're getting that set up, there's a question. So if you're doing this AI and it goes out and gets the information and it gets any of that metadata wrong, is there any way for us to manually correct that on the back end?
Absolutely. In fact, what you'll notice is what you didn't see in that demo, you saw in that demo kind of just the front end to an end user. There's absolutely a confidence aspect to this. So in this Content Center, you're actually going to see more of the behind the scenes. So hopefully that'll answer some of those questions around both correcting and even saying, hey, I think you should verify these fields or whatever, and the confidence level. So here we are in a Project Cortex Content Center. And you can see there's these classifiers. So there's extractors and classifiers in the Content Center. You're going to see a lot more. In fact, these are models that have been built. And so here we are looking at the back end of these models, and you can see there's a contracts one. Okay, so here's our quick access. Add from library, learning how to label things, because obviously the great thing is teaching Project Cortex how to label things. We can create a new entity extractor or apply an existing model. So here in this case, we're actually going to set up a new extractor, okay? So in this one, we basically are adding, these are Word documents. You know, the other ones were PDFs that were fairly structured. Here we're looking at something quite a bit more unstructured, where this is a Word document for contracts. So these are this services agreement, this services agreement dated March 1st between Fabricam and whoever. You can see it's highlighting things that it thinks are relevant based on kind of learning. And it's saying, hey, this is a services, this is consulting, blah, blah, blah. So it's kind of learning. Right now, there's no labels on these files. We're going to pick services. If it wants to learn. Okay, yep, it found services. And we can, there's predicted and there's labeled. Identify patterns that occur with a labeled identity and characters around it. So basically, we're saying based on a phrase list, but you can see there's proximity type. So this really gets kind of deeper into the idea of training. And you can choose what type it is. It's been trained now, and we publish that model around contracts. Here's the library address. So now we've got a contracts one. Here's a bunch of contracts we've added. We add those. It's starting to populate. Let's look at this contract. And you can see this is a consulting agreement. But you can see after training it, we taught it contract company, contract value, contract type, contract services. So even in Word documents, based on proximity or based on phrase type and so on. We can extract content even out of Word documents that are a little bit less structured. Really powerful. So now we've got really relevant metadata because we've got companies and contract amounts and types and so on. All the metadata is here. And you can see it. Pretty cool. All right, so that hopefully that taught you a little bit more of kind of where things are going to, having these classifiers as well as the, it's like being able to, you know, some people just have all of these documents all in one library. You can go and classify them first, or add the classification as the first step and then extract. So you have different types of data even in the same library. You know, we don't live in a perfect world. Sometimes all these documents end up in the same place. And you can apply the classification before it then dives into it. Any questions on content centers? So you kind of learned the difference between the knowledge center being that knowledge center with topics and topic cards and very structured, or very much driven based on these topics that are highlighted in the tools and so on. And then the content center being more about the other stuff. Did we get any questions around the content center?
Nothing specific around that. I'll save the rest till the end.
Okay, cool. All right, so here we are. What is Project Cortex? It's a knowledge network. It's helping take these topics, tie them to people, tie them to our meetings, our emails, our documents. It's building relationships around things that it thinks are related and then having humans validate them. I do think that acronyms is a huge one. It's a big barrier when you're a new employee, for sure. And as well, the idea is, and you think about it as well, when you're involved in a project, people are doing other things in a variety of different places. This knowledge network being able to kind of keep you up to date on what's happening. Project Cortex is knowledge management. It's helping you create, collect, classify. It then helps you retrieve, share, manage, distribute it, and on the using it side as well, the consuming, reusing, enhancing. It's this whole, it really is an evolution to knowledge management. I mentioned that I was going to include a couple Microsoft slides. This is one of them. What is Project Cortex? There's kind of three main phrases there at the top. Empowering people with knowledge and expertise in the apps they use every day. You'll hear that one a lot. And that absolutely applies to the Knowledge Center. Automatically connect and organize knowledge across teams and systems. And you know, that kind of falls in between, you could say. And then managing, protecting content with AI, built-in security and workflow, where you're extracting classified unstructured content, like your forms, your documents, your images, your videos, training models to recognize business data, and talking about this content center as a hero destination. In fact, that's kind of a funny Microsoft word, but these hero destinations. The content center is one of those hero destinations, and the knowledge center is the other hero destination that they refer to. So I put together a few different visuals. So since we walked through these demos, these aren't going to mean as much, but basically, what is Project Cortex? We've got the topic cards. There's a topic card in SharePoint, topic cards in Word. So you saw one in Outlook, you saw one in SharePoint, and here's what it looks like in Word, where it's actually Project Core here. We're like, oh, what is that? And then you can right click on it, and it has a little panel that pops out that has the stuff that's being fed from the Knowledge Center. And it's extracting, grouping, clustering, filtering. So as an example here on the very bottom one, you get your definition, an acronym, related people, related files, related sites, the project, and so on, related topics. The other thing it enhances is the people. So when you're preparing for Project Cortex, if you guys are kind of ignoring the whole people aspect, This is one where I do recommend people getting ready for Project Cortex to make sure that the data that's in those people cards, make sure that people can trust them. If they don't trust them, it's going to be a bit of chaos because Project Cortex is going to drive people here. There's a little bit of gamification, this keeping your topics up to date. Hey, is machine learning still relevant? Yes, I want to keep it on my profile. Hey, we recommend you add these things, these topics to your profile based on suggestions. You know, the documents you're uploading look like they're about this. We think you should strengthen your profile by adding these topics. The Knowledge Center, the Knowledge Bot. Okay, so Teams. Teams is not so much about files. Even though you can store your files, they're being stored in OneDrive and SharePoint or any of the other file repositories that Teams supports. But the cool thing here is I'm having a conversation with somebody. Emily's talking to, I guess it doesn't even say their name, but talking to somebody else. Oh, and then, yeah, there's 3 participants. It's not showing the 3rd name. But hey, that's a great answer. Let me pull up the Knowledge Bot. Knowledge Bot, add question and answer as part of construction operations reliability. Knowledge Bot says, got it, I'll add this conversation to the topic constructions operations and reliability as questions and answers. So that section on your topic card around questions and answers can be populated from Teams or from Yammer. Here's our knowledge web parts. So there's some new web parts, including LinkedIn Learning. So you think about this knowledge, wouldn't it be great if we could connect our LinkedIn Learning where we have training and enhancing that experience, because people who are in the Knowledge Center are people looking for answers. They're trying they're seeking for knowledge. We got our Content Center, which we looked at in the demo. And we can come back to that question now about search, but basically the search, Microsoft Search connectors, absolutely part of this. Microsoft Search is in the ingestion API is in preview. You can build your own graph Microsoft Search API or against the Search API. There's the indexing API, which is in private preview. There's the query API, which is in public beta. So there's a number of Microsoft projects that are actually going on simultaneously as it relates to Microsoft Search. There are 6 of these connectors, or 6 or 7 of them, the ones you see below. Windows File Share, ServiceNow, SQL, intranet websites, MediaWiki, the Azure Data Lake, and Salesforce. There are the first few that they've chosen, that Microsoft chosen to. And a lot of these are in beta. We'll hear more in the next few weeks, I think. But as well, there's partners like BA Insight as an example. Not to be the only one, but it's a kind of a one that we see a lot in the SharePoint world, where there's hundreds of other connectors that are going to be available by partners as well. And think of this more from a mining perspective. So when Project Cortex is suggesting knowledge topics and being able to connect those things, it's absolutely the mining side of it versus the highlighted topics part of it. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. We've got a couple minutes left.
Yep.
I got a couple more questions, high level. Number 1, are you going to be sharing the slides out?
Yes.
So are you going to provide those somewhere?
Yep. Yeah, my slides are on slideshare.com/Joel Oleson, and you can see a version of these slides that are there, as well as that infographic that I showed earlier. It's also there.
And then the other question is, when are we going to get information about licensing for Project Cortex?
So one important thing is Project Cortex is not going to be included with E1 or E3. It will be an added value, like it's a separate thing. I'm not saying what it's in and how to get there, but we do expect to hear more information at the upcoming Microsoft events. Naomi's continued to say first half, so build is in a few weeks, as well as this Microsoft Virtual Marathon, and she is doing a session on Project Cortex. I would highly recommend people tuning into those sessions.
So I know we're down to about 1 more minute. Real quick, is there anything else you'd like to share before we have to take off?
Nope. I'm showing another Microsoft slide that kind of shows some of the architecture. This is a nice reference. Another reference one that's good for you that is in the deck. I kind of tried to put the cycle that kind of goes with Project Cortex around machine learning and how all that jazz works. And that's it. So you kind of see how we summarized it back to those 7 points around business value.
Well, thank you so much for being here and walking us through this. I personally, this is everything my entire career has been about, so I'm super excited about Project Cortex. I know a lot of people, especially in Kansas City, really are moving forward in terms of understanding more about taxonomies and ontologies and AI and machine learning. And so pulling all this together is really exciting. And we're really looking forward to what this can do from a business value perspective. Everybody else seems to be really happy with all of this. Last comment, Dave says he loves your Padres hat and can't wait for another game.
Nice. That's great. That's great. Yeah, let me just end with, I do think this, we've all been kind of waiting for AI to make its primetime debut. This is AI for the masses. You know, it's like you think about dashboards and those kinds of things with Power BI, like this is analytics for the masses. This is AI for the masses. And I do think this is going to land really well. I'm very excited about what this brings. There's a lot of jobs and new jobs and positioning that I think this can create. All SharePoint people out there should absolutely be paying attention to what this potentially means for the SharePoint world around all those investments people have made in putting all that data into SharePoint. Here's some payoff. This is fantastic payoff for optimizing search, optimizing discovery, and taking knowledge to the next level. This is fantastic stuff. I'm very excited about this. And thanks for your time, and thanks for tuning in. Really appreciate everybody joining the user group.
Thank you. Lots of thank yous. Everybody have a fantastic afternoon, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye, guys.